Well, Dr. Michael Ogo is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Babcock University, joins us for more now on the situation. Thank you for joining us. Doctor, this war is going into its 7th week. A lot has happened this past week, but then yesterday we heard a rare statement from Russia saying its military has had significant losses in this conflict. How long more do you think Russia can fight this war?
Good evening, Millicent. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. To the question, how long Russia can hold off this war, I think, Russia alone can answer that question. Because, I mean, we can see that obviously both sides have lost, men, have lost materials. And it is obvious that the longer the war continues, the longer the war continues, the more likely it is for the parties to get weary in fighting. And so perhaps this is just one of the indications, that maybe Russia is beginning to see that, they are losing sides, and perhaps they are beginning to think in that direction of how do we go from here. So perhaps this is just one indication that, maybe we can begin to see or be hope that there will be an end to this conflict in the near future. But with regards to exactly how long, the war will last, I mean, only the parties involved can correctly say, correctly say that.
So some analysts have said that Vladimir Putin sees this current conflict as a holy war, and the Russian ruler will settle for nothing less than the complete subjugation of Ukraine or the country's destruction. And this is according to some analysts. I know that we heard from the presidential spokesperson about 2 days ago, who said that he kept insisting that it's a special military operations. Yes, he said that they had suffered some losses, but then he said that, this will sort of continue when he was trying to explain what indeed, Russia was doing to Ukraine in that interview. But do you think that the president, Russia's president, has passed the point of no return in this conflict?
The point of no return, I don't know where exactly that would be, but I mean, from the talks that have gone on, the peace talks, negotiations that have gone on so far between the two parties, it is obvious that there isn't any green light. There isn't any light at the end of the tunnel yet, because the parties are still adamant, even though, of course, the Ukrainian president has said that, they're going to back down on their bid to join the NATO, and they're going to do all of this. But we can still see that, it is obvious that there are still conditions, there are still terms that especially Russia wants Ukraine to accept, that Ukraine, is not willing to accept yet. So, and of course, Russia would not back down until they have gotten Ukraine to the point where they want Ukraine to be,
But
and Ukraine,
Doctor,
on the other hand...
So, sorry to cut in. Something Russia said was that it has sort of backed down, it's given, a window to really negotiate, and this is by withdrawing troops to the eastern region.
Yeah. So I mean, we can see even after the claim that troops have been withdrawn, we can see the level of escalation, the level of conflict that has continued even still after then. So these things are just ways that, like some have argued, Russia is using to buy time to regroup, and launch a more heavy attack. I don't think that Russia has withdrawn troops at any point. I mean, of course, it's possible that they might be pretending to do that, but speaking facts, I don't think that Russia is backing down just yet, until perhaps they have gotten Ukraine to the point where they want Ukraine to be, which is subject to the Russian authorities. And Ukraine, on the other hand, too, being an independent state, is not also going to give in that easily. So the two parties have are very risky positions in terms of the negotiations and the conditions that are tied to them. So I see that this war is going to continue for as long as possible, except until, of course, there's some serious level of compromise that is made by both parties involved before peace can actually prevail. That's my thought on that.
And like you've mentioned, no one really knows, you know, if what the future holds for negotiations or even peace talk.
Exactly.
A lot of focus this week was on the alleged killings, civilians in Bucha, Bodianka, of course, and also what's happening in Mariupol. Russia keeps denying responsibility, saying it was staged, saying that it's the satellite company in cahoots with the Pentagon, saying it was staged by the Ukraine government. What do you make of this?
Yeah, so you know this Bucha killing or this human rights war crimes allegation has been quite an interesting, you know, it has been an interesting turn in the event of things in this Russian invasion, and I think that as much as it is sad, as much as it is, I mean, it is sad that you know you see bodies like you see bodies like that lying on the streets. It is important that an investigation is done, you know, because there's also the possibility of a military sabotage, you know, which Ukraine is likely to stage as well. I mean, is capable of staging, you know, just like Russia is claiming. So that possibility we cannot rule out completely. So in as much as, of course, we are against war crimes, we preach and hope that human rights are protected, that the rules of engagement are upheld while combat is going on. It's important that an independent investigation is conducted to ascertain what exactly happened in Bucha, you know, and of course all these other areas to see exactly, you know, if Russia is guilty. And of course, if Russia is guilty, then of course they should be held accountable for what they have done, you know. So for that particular for that particular discovery, I am of the view that we cannot conclude until an investigation is done. And of course, we can see the Austrian Prime Minister, we can see the British Prime Minister, all who have visited Kyiv recently. Perhaps these individuals can help provide some level of information and insight, because we need to actually confirm what happened on the ground. I mean, what we can see are images, pictures, videos, but you know, there needs to be an independent investigation that actually tells us, you know, what exactly went on in those locations.
But it also won't be surprising that Russia can throw that out as not being fair in terms of those who are conducting this investigation involving Russia and then Ukraine of these war crimes. Because, I mean, Russia, you know, keeps talking about how it's the West and, you know, and its allies that are after it and using Ukraine. So in terms of that process, it should be fair, shouldn't it? Where Russia can be given a chance to defend itself, and also the likelihood that Ukraine might have committed war crimes. But something the presidential spokesperson of Russia also said with regards to those killings was that he said that no resident in Ukraine suffered from Russia's withdrawal. So essentially denying that any one Ukrainian was harmed by its troops.
Well, I mean, you know, all these are just, you know, information news, you know. So we can't ascertain the correctness, the validity of any of these until, you know, there's an investigation that is done. And of course, it is a war situation, so it will be highly unlikely that that statement is correct. It will be highly unlikely because, I mean, we can see from the much we can see in the media, you know, it is I mean, it is so untrue. So, but we can't ascertain the level of certainty, level of validity of these statements until, you know, either the United Nations or some other European Union or some other independent organization carries out an investigation to understand and understudy, find out exactly what happened, you know, in those communities. But until then, we can only just speculate and, you know, and listen to these talks. But we need to investigate, and this has to be done sooner or later. You know, perhaps even the war ends, even after the war ends. I mean, we need to know exactly what happened, especially in Bucha, to know, you know, whether a war crime was committed, and people need to answer, you know, for their actions, basically.
Indeed. China is saying that it marks a dangerous precedent, and this is the decision of the United Nations Security Council's vote to suspend Russia this week. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Well, the whole issue of the United Nations, Security Council, and of course the other issue with South Africa, and other African countries, perhaps other countries, arguing and using this opportunity to argue that the UN Security Council and other UN agencies are long overdue for some kind of adjustment, overhaul. That entire discussion is long overdue, right? It's long overdue because it's obvious that, number one, the UN as an international organization is not a government. It is just some kind of monitoring organization, some kind of gatekeeping organization for independent states. And so while we hope that the UN and all these other international organizations are able to rise up to occasions like this and provide the needed direction, the needed coordination of activities, these organizations still remain, there's a limit to the kind of power that they have. All right. So it is right, I think, that that Russia was expelled from the UN Security Council because what Russia has done in the eyes of the world stands at contrast with what the Human Rights Commission or the Human Rights Council preaches, the ideals of the Human Rights Council. So I think that is the right step, and I don't know what precedence that will be laying, because this is a member of the Security Council, going against the principles, even though, of course, arguments can be made that, the US has breached similar principles in the past, and some other things have happened that which didn't really go, or which just went down the drain like that. But I don't see it as setting any precedents that should not be set, because these are principles that the UN upholds, and Russia has blatantly gone against these principles, so they have to be brought to question. And of course, if the UN just sits back and does nothing, then that is even a more dangerous precedent. So I think that this is perhaps a better precedent that should have been set at this time.
And that brings to question what Zelensky earlier said, that if they cannot, do anything impactful, then perhaps they might need to dissolve themselves, raising the question of their ability to fulfill their mandates, maintaining international peace and security. But we'd like to thank you, Dr. Michael Ogwu. Thank you so much, Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Babcock University. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for your time, Millicent. I'm grateful.
Still to come on the program, more on Ukrainian president's call for more sanctions today as we assess the new ones imposed this week. Please stay with us.